Hi friends, I'm glad to be with you this week as we continue talking about courage. We talked about the courage to make mistakes. We talked about the courage to take a leap. And this week, we're going to talk about the courage that it takes to change your mind, especially when you've done something maybe not super awesome. The book we're going to read today is one of my favorites. This is a book that I have owned for 20 years. Many of you may have already read it. It may be new to some of you. But it's not only a great book about a surprising kind of courage, but it also contains some really cool art. And so as I read the book to you today, and even as I show you the cover, I want you to notice how the artist or the illustrator colored his pictures. Is this a familiar book to any of you? Where the Wild Things Are. We're going to read it together, but as we do, I'm going to hold it really closely. I want you to notice how the artist drew everything in the book, from the trees to the monsters. I'm going to get super close. I want you to notice not only the big picture, but I want you to notice the details. How did the artist make the monsters look furry? How did the artist make it look like it was nighttime? How did the artist give texture, so fur and grass, to his illustrations? Let's look at it together. Not only listening to the story, but admiring the art too. And as I read it, I want you to see if you can pick out the place where Max, the main character, was the most courageous. I'll be curious to see what you think, because to me, it's a surprising place. Let's read it together. Where the Wild Things Are, story and pictures by Maurice Sendac. That means that the author of this book is also the illustrator. Sometimes we skip over this part of the book, but I want you to look at the illustration on the jacket cover, or on these end pages. I want you to look at the texture, how the artist used his pen to create this nighttime jungle. This book was given to us 20 years ago when our first son was born. Where the Wild Things Are, story and pictures by Maurice Sendac. The night Max wore his wolf suit and made mischief of one kind and another, his mother called him Wild Thing, and Max said, "I'll eat you up." So he was sent to bed without eating anything. That very night, in Max's room, a forest grew and grew and grew until his ceiling hung with vines and the walls became the world all around. And an ocean tumbled by with a private boat for Max, and he sailed off through night and day and in and out of weeks and almost over a year to where the wild things are. And when he came to the place where the wild things are, they roared their terrible roars and gnashed their terrible teeth and rolled their terrible eyes and showed their terrible claws. Let's pause for just a minute and look at their terrible teeth and their terrible eyes and their terrible claws, because we might be drawing those in a little bit. Till Max said, "Be still," and tamed them with the magic trick of staring into all their yellow eyes without blinking once, and they were frightened and called him the most wild thing of all. And they made him king of all wild things. "And now," cried Max, "let the wild rumpus start." Notice that there aren't any words with these pictures. The pictures tell the story of the wild rumpus. "Now stop," Max said, and sent the wild things off to bed without their supper. And Max, the king of all wild things, was lonely and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all. Then all around from far away across the world, he smelled good things to eat. So he gave up being king of where the wild things are. But the wild things cried, "Oh, please don't go. We'll eat you up. We love you so." And Max said, "No." The wild things roared their terrible roars and gnashed their terrible teeth and rolled their terrible eyes and showed their terrible claws. But Max stepped into his private boat and waved goodbye and sailed back over a year and in and out of weeks and through a day and into the night of his very own room, where he found his supper waiting for him. And it was still hot. Now I want us to look back at the story for just a minute. Stop for just a minute and think about where you think Max was the most brave. Where did he show courage? Did he show courage, the most courage, when he yelled at his mother and called her a wild thing? I don't think so. Did he show courage when he imagined a room and a forest in his room? I don't think so. Did he show the most courage when he sailed away to the land of where the wild things are? I don't think so. Did he show the most courage when he faced all of these wild beasts and told them to be still and stared them in the eyes, and when he invited them to join a wild rumpus? I don't think so. Did he show the most courage when he sent them off to bed without their supper? I don't think so. The place where I think Max showed the most courage was right here, when he realized that yelling at his mother and running away and pretending that nothing happened made him sad and lonely, and that he needed to go back. And so it's right here when Max says no and goodbye and starts to go back, ready to go back to his room, ready to face the consequences of what he has done. That takes bravery. To admit that you're wrong and turn around and come back, that takes courage. And what happened when Max came back? There was love waiting for him on the table. His dinner was there. His mom loved him and showed it to him by bringing him his dinner to his room. Sometimes it feels like the most courageous thing we can do is to stand up for what we believe in. But sometimes the most courageous thing that we can do is to admit we're wrong, just like Max did. He went back to his room, faced the consequences, and there he was welcomed by a hot dinner. So I think that changing, admitting we're wrong, and going back is one of the most courageous things that we can do. And so in our art piece today, we are going to draw ourselves as Max. Let me grab mine. It's over here. we're going to draw ourselves in Max's costume in the boat going back. But we're also going to do it using the technique that Maurice Sendac used. And this technique has a fancy name. It's called cross-hatching. I'm going to show you the book again. And we're going to talk about this technique. All right, let's look at some of these pictures together and we can see this cross-hatching. We can see it really well in the beginning of the book. Can you see how the illustrator, author and illustrator, drew lines that cross over one another to make shadows on his images? Let's look here. This is a great example. So in the bedroom, we can see that Sendak drew lines to make the shadows. Now he drew them all going in the same direction to show you where the shadows are on the pillows and on the bed skirt. But in places where he wanted it to be darker, look what he did. He drew lines, let's see if I can zoom in even a little bit more. He drew lines to cross over them. So on the wall in the background, you see lines going vertically and lines going horizontally. We see that at the bottom of the bed skirt. So the lines at the top are vertical, the lines at the bottom are horizontal. Sendak didn't just color things in dark, but he used this cross-hatching technique to show where shadow is. He also uses it to show texture. See how furry that tail looks? It's all just little lines. He doesn't color in. He uses dark black lines next to each other to create shadow and shading on every part of his illustrations. So we're going to do the same, but before we do that, we're going to learn a little bit about cross-hatching. So I want you to get out your journal, and actually, as a bonus project, we'll get to do a monster maybe later, but we're going to focus on this first. I want you to get out your journal, and we're going to practice some cross-hatching. We've done our dinosaur, we've done Scaredy Squirrel, and then on the back of Scaredy Squirrel, we're just going to use this as a practice page. I'm going to grab a blank page and show you a little bit how to crosshatch. You're going to want either a pencil or a black colored pencil, or if you have a black pen, that will work too. So grab those materials, open your journal to that page, and let's do some crosshatching together. All right, the first thing I want you to do is just draw a rectangle. Doesn't have to be perfect. Draw a rectangle at the top of your page. I'm going to use a black pen. Over here, I used a pencil. If you want to write cross-hatching across the top so that you can remember what this technique is called, you're welcome to, but you don't need to. This is a technique that anybody could do. Anybody who can draw a line can do cross-hatching. So I want you to notice on this rectangle, if you squint your eyes and just look at the rectangle, you would say it's lighter on the left and gets darker as we go to the right. But I didn't use a darker art medium, I just added more lines. So we're going to start by putting our finger in this first area of the rectangle. Now, if you are a lefty, I think you can do that too. You know what? If you're a lefty, go ahead and we're going to do yours the other way. You'll put your finger on the right side and move it like this as we go. If you're a righty, if you're right-handed, you can put your finger here. Put your finger there and leave that place blank. Then in the rest of your rectangle, I just want you to draw. Now notice, am I being super careful and drawing perfectly straight lines that are just perfectly evenly spaced together? No. I want you to draw just some quick up and down lines across your rectangle. Once you've got those down, I want you to cover up the next section with your finger. And I want you to draw some more vertical lines right on top of what we have. Okay. Then you're going to cover up the next section with your finger. And I want you to draw some horizontal, some flat lines, left to right lines. When you're done with that, I want you to move your finger again, cover up a little bit, and I want you to draw some diagonal lines going in one direction. And when you're done with that, cover that up. And in this last little spot, I want you to draw diagonal lines going in the opposite direction. And then when you take your finger off, you will have this rectangle that moves from light to dark just by cross-hatching. Now I might decide to go back and add just a few little lines there, but can you see how we created that whole, it's called a gradation, from light to dark just by cross-hatching? Now let's try this. This is super fancy. Draw a circle, doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, mine looks like an egg, no big deal. I want you to stick your finger again, just somewhere kind of on the top side. It doesn't matter which one. And I want you to just add some vertical lines. And they don't even have to go from top to bottom. You see how some of mine start in the middle? We're just adding some vertical lines. Then move your finger a little bit. And the next thing we're going to do is add some horizontal lines. Move your finger across your circle a little bit, and in this space that is remaining, let's add diagonal lines one way. Move your finger a little bit, and in the space that's remaining, let's add some diagonal lines the other way. And look at that. You just made the shading, you turned a circle into a three-dimensional ball. We have highlight and we have shadow. Now you could come back and add a few more. That's the great thing about cross-hatching. There's not a right or wrong way to do it as long as you're doing little bits of lines that cross over each other. All right, so we're going to use that technique to create a monster or to create ourselves in the boat. So let's flip our journals and let's keep our paper horizontal or landscape. And today we're only going to create our image on one piece instead of two pieces, because sometimes cross-hatching can make your fingers tired. You might have to shake out your hand a little bit. I'm going to show you how to draw this scene, the scene where Max had the courage to go back, had the courage to change his mind and apologize. I'm going to show you how to draw this, but I will tell you, if you don't want to draw this, if you would rather draw a wild thing or a palm tree, you are welcome to do that. I'll show you after this a little bonus footage on how I would draw my wild thing. But if you want to just look at this and draw it, you're welcome to, as long as you use cross-hatching to do all of your shading. But for those of you that want to draw yourself in the boat, being brave and courageous, let's do that together. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my face. Just like Max was wearing his little wolf suit, and you can see his face peeking out, I'm going to do the same thing here. To do that, I'm going to just draw the letter U right in the middle of my page. I'm going to add a top to the U, and then I'm going to add my wolf suit. My wolf suit will be a triangle, a rainbow, and a triangle right on the top, and then another big U down on the bottom. So it's almost like wearing a Halloween costume, isn't it? Now, Max's eyes are just little tiny rainbows with a U at the bottom. You can color those in. And his nose is really just a letter J. Now you can make your face do anything you want while you're being courageous like this. I'm gonna make mine happy. Maybe half happy. Now I did notice something I forgot on this one is that Max's wolf costume had some whiskers. That makes it look really fun. So let's give us some whiskers. Now you'll notice, because I'm a girl, I added some hair here. For this one, we'll just leave it like regular old Max. He does have a little bit of hair poking through like this. Depending on what your hairstyle is like, you may choose to leave yours like this, or you may choose to draw some hair out like that. All right, let's do Max's body, and we're only going to do the upper part of the body. Let's do the buttons first. 1, 2, 3. The buttons will help us know where the top of our boat is going to be. And Max's wolf suit had claws for arms. So we're going to bring our arm down, and if you want to make an L, that way your arm can be going over the edge of the boat. Max's claws are just lots of like W's or V's, so I'm going to just go up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, and then come back up to make my arm. We're going to have Max saying goodbye to the wild things, so we're going to make a V for his other arm. Another V below it, and then some pointy claws for his hand. We're going to have his shirt come down and stop right below the buttons. Now we're going to draw the boat, and the boat is just a line across with a big wide U at the bottom. So I'm going to start at the hand and make a big line across, and his hand is over the boat. So I'm going to come to the other side of the arm and extend it. And then let's make a big U. Now my U fell off my page, and that is just fine. It's almost like we're making a banana. This boat is made of wood, so I'm going to draw a line, and I'm going to draw some lines across my boat to make the wood on my boat. Now Max had his name on his boat. I'm going to put this back up here for a minute so we can look at our Max picture. Max had his name on his boat. My name is Kelsey. Let's say that my name is Jose. You can write it anywhere you want, but I'm going to put my Jose name right there. Some of you might be giggling right now because you might have a Jose in your class. All right, now let's put some sails on our boat. He has 2 sails, and they're just big triangles. So I'm going to draw a big triangle here. Now I'm going to stop my triangle when I hit my hand and go over that speed bump and continue it over there. There's also a mast, which is the big pole where the sails attach. So I'm going to just do a rectangle between those two. And then I'm going to do another triangle down here. His triangles have some curves. It doesn't really matter what your triangle looks like. This is your boat. And then he's got this great little flag, which is just a squiggly triangle, like a flag flowing in the wind. I decided on mine to add a little bit of hills and water in the background. You can do whatever you want in the background of yours. You may choose to do some of the wild thing trees, you may do some plants, you may do some shrubs, you may do whatever you'd like. I am going to add my water line back here so we can tell that Jose has changed his mind and is sailing back over the ocean. So there's our, oops, looks like he's floating there. There's our basic drawing, but now I want to be like Maurice Sendac, and I want to add the cross hatching. So I'm going to add my cross hatching like Maurice Sendac did. I'm going to show that the outside of the boat has a little bit of shadow, that the outsides of the sails have a little shadow, and the outfit has a little bit of shadow. And I'm going to do that just by drawing lines. Some of them will be longer, some of them will be shorter. If you look here, let's see if we can zoom in here. There we go. See, some of his lines are just tiny little dashes. Other lines are longer dashes. But go ahead and take your pencil and just start doing them. This is no place to be perfect. it's just a place to start adding some shadow, which makes our picture look a little bit more realistic, gives it some more depth and some more interest. Now, once I start adding, notice my lines are what we would call parallel. Parallel lines are lines that all go in the same direction. So your lines may go like this or like this, but the first layer is always parallel. Then after that, we can go perpendicular, which is across our lines to get more of our shading. I'm going to put this in fast motion and just do some cross-hatching on mine, and you can do some cross-hatching on yours. How's your hand? A little bit tired? Shake it out if you need to. And let's add some color to our picture. I want you to notice that Sendak does not use a lot of really strong colors. He actually uses some pretty soft, light colors. What makes his pictures strong is the existence of these dark black lines and all of this cross-hatched shading. So I'm going to use crayons to color mine in, and I'm going to use them in a different way. At least I'm going to use most of them in a different way. I'm going to use the back of the crayon, the flat end of the crayon. It's a fast way to color, to get color in a space, and we get smooth color instead of the lines from the crayons. See, just like that, I have my boat colored. Oh, you guys might hear my dogs barking in the background. You can color your boat and your sails and whatever color you want. I'm going to just go ahead and choose the same colors that Maurice Sendac chose. In some places you might have to turn your crayon around and use the point. But isn't it fun to just get a lot of color on there really quickly? I'll add some color to my water and my hills and my sky, but you can choose to color yours any way you want. I want you to notice that I colored outside of the lines in a couple of places, didn't I? And I could cry about that, or I could say, oh, that's going to be a beautiful oops. In fact, I'm just going to cover it over with some cross-hatching, and we'll pretend like it was always meant to be there. Takes courage to make mistakes too, doesn't it? I hope you had courage to make mistakes, courage to try something new. And now that you're thinking about the courage that it takes to change, is there somebody you need to say you're sorry to? Is there some way that you've been behaving that maybe you want to change that a little bit, that you want to hop in that boat and turn around? Those are good things to think about. And those are brave and courageous things to think about. And so I hope that you will be I hope that you will be courageous this week as well. Stick around if you want for a little bonus footage, and I'll give you a couple of pointers on how to draw a wild thing and use the cross-hatching method as well. If you're not going to stick around for that, then I sure had fun with you already drawing together, even when we're apart. All right, if you want to stick around for a little wild thing drawing, I'll just show you how I would go about drawing my own wild thing. First thing I always do is check out the basic shapes. So heads are kind of circles or ovals. Bodies are pretty much rectangles. And arms and legs are rectangles too, with some triangular claws, some triangular horns, some triangular teeth. So once I've looked at that and I've said, well, I know how to draw circles and rectangles and triangles, then I can draw myself a wild thing. So I'm going to just look at this guy for my model, and I'm going to say, all right, his head is a circle. His body is kind of a rectangle. You can do his arms any old way you want, but really the top of the arm is one rectangle and the bottom of the arm is another rectangle. Let's make him saying hi to us. One rectangle and two rectangles. And we'll just go ahead and do his legs. I'm going to do his legs kind of bowed like a letter C. So a curved rectangle. I'll give him a little oval foot with some big claws. It's almost like we're drawing parentheses down here with our backwards C, an oval, and some claws. They have really big round eyes. So I would go ahead and draw two big round eyes, and the nose is squished right up against the eyes. And those nostrils form a real wide shape that comes out to the edge of the eyes. So I'm going to do my two parentheses, and then I'm going to do nostril, U, nostril, and the big grin that goes across the face with some triangular teeth spaced out however you want them to be. I notice he has horns up here, and I forgot to give him some hands. The hands are just a U or a rainbow with some more claws. Let's put some crazy circles in those eyes. And then it's all about cross-hatching, my friends. We're gonna just start doing lines. And notice the more lines that we add, the more terrifying and horrible and dark our wild thing looks. Even in places where there isn't the hair, we see little bits of texture or fur is indicated by these little dashes. So you can just keep adding all the fur, all the hair, all the craziness that you want. You can go back and add a striped shirt if you want. Now I'm just adding my first layer of cross-hatching, but we can see that those lines are really close together. And those lots of little lines really close together will give us a really good dark shape. Even look at the kind of furry scales on the legs. Sendak didn't draw those in. He didn't do, let me move my camera a little bit. He didn't do this. He did this. He made little V's with those little lines, and you see the difference, how this looks like mermaid scales, but this we see that there's some fur. So keep playing, make yourself your own wild thing. Add some terrible horns, some terrible eyes, some terrible claws, and then color it in any way you want, but keep adding those lines, those cross-hatching little dashes that make for such an interesting, professional looking illustration. Thanks for hanging with me for that little bonus footage.